Hi, my name is Luke May, and I'm going to do a brief introduction to CSS, which is Cascading Style Sheets, for Indiana State University's CS 151 course. Okay, so let's get started. I like to have a little folder on my desktop called Dev. It's where I do my dev work, and I'm going to add a new folder and call it Lecture 4. So in this folder I'm going to make an empty document. And this is going to say Intro to CSS. It's going to be an HTML document. I'm going to open up Terminal. And we host all of our HTML on the CS server at ISU. So I'm going to log in with SSH. My user account, one of my user accounts is CS15100. That's my username at the host. The host server is cs.indstate.edu. Okay, I'm logged in. Alright, I have this public HTML folder, and that's our server set up so anything hosted in that file or in that folder is publicly available over the internet. So any user account has a public HTML folder, and the permissions are set up such that the Apache server can access that folder. Anything inside that folder is on the web, so be careful with that. Okay, so previously I made a little index page. I got a cat image, some stuff here, so I'm going to make a new directory, and this is going to be Lecture 4. There it is, Lecture 4. So everything I do over here on my local machine, I'm going to move it over to Lecture 4 when I'm done, and then we can view it in the browser. So let me open a new browser here. So cs.indstate.edu slash my username cs15100 or tilde username. So this will take me to my index.html inside the public HTML folder. So here's course notes that I have for this so far. So I'm going to add another link under here that's going to link to Intro to CSS under Lecture 4. Okay, so we go. I'm going to add a list item under our OL tag, which is ordered list, which gives us numeric bullet points. Add an A tag, an anchor tag. So I'm going to look in the same folder as this index.html and look for a directory that I just made called Lecture 4. And then I'm going to look for intro to css.html. I'm going to close my anchor tag. And then I have to close my list item tag. There we go. Open tag, close tag. Open tag, close tag. Okay, good to go. So Control O writes out, it's like save. Control X leaves Pico. ls. I can type cat to view index.html. Sure enough, that's in there. So if I refresh the page, I should see a new link. This link is dead because I don't actually have that file in public.html yet. Okay, so we've done, in the past we've done FileZilla, which allows you to access or transfer files from your local machine to the CS server. I'm going to show you a new command works for Linux and Mac called scopy. It stands for secure copy, and it basically does everything that FileZilla does, but with a command line. There is a Windows version. If we use PuTTY to connect to the server, if you're on Windows, and PuTTY has a command you can install called PSCP, which is, I assume, PuTTY secure copy. So you can use that with Windows, and I'll leave that to you to look up online. So the command scopy, we navigate to my local desktop and my dev folder. Alright, lecture 4. So I can open Atom, which is the editor I've installed. It's a very good text editor. It's got some quirks and it's a little bit slow, but it's pretty decent. You can look in lecture 1, and there's this intro to CSS HTML file. Okay, so starting out with every HTML5 file, which is what we are going to be using, we use the doctype tag that lets the browser know what type of file we're using. And then every HTML file starts with HTML tags. Now I just typed HTML and hit tab on Atom and it filled everything out for me. That's one of the nice things about Atom. That's called a snippet. You can type a few characters, press tab, and it fills in some of the basics for you. Alright, so this is under our title tag. I can do intro to CSS. So this hasn't added much. We've got our doctype tag, HTML tag. Inside HTML we have the head tag and the body tag. The body is where all the displayable content goes, with the exception of title. Title is what you see on the browser tab. Okay, this meta set UTF-8, that tells the browser what type of character encoding to use. That's a bit beyond the scope of where we are in this course right now. But a true HTML5 document uses this. The browsers are pretty forgiving though, so if you leave this out, generally they know, and it's okay. But if you're following the specification, you need this in there. Alright, so let's start out with an H1 that says intro to CSS. Nice and easy. Okay, so that's all we have. We have basically this big H1 tag, this big heading that says intro to CS. So now what we can do from our terminal is I can cd into lecture 4 ls. So there's our intro to CSS.html. So with the scopy command, I can type scopy. What file do I want to copy? I want to copy intro to CSS.html into a folder back at the CS server in my home directory, public HTML, lecture 4. So right now there's nothing in this folder on the CS server. My local machine, scopy you tell it what file you want to copy for the first argument, and then the second argument is the path to the file. It takes the username, the host, and then the path where you want to copy that file. So my username is cs15100 at cs.indstate.edu, and then colon. Anything after the colon is now the path on that server where I want this file to end up. So I want it in my home directory, and then in the public HTML directory, and then inside of lecture 4. Now I had to already create lecture 4. So we press enter. Now it's asking for my password. Just like on FileZilla, you have to have your password to copy files over. So you type that in. Okay, see, it lists out all the files you asked it to copy. So here's the one file we asked it to copy. It gives you progress indicator. It's already copied. It's 100% done, and this is kind of the speed, average speed, kilobytes per second. So if we go back over here on the server, type ls, sure enough, there it is. So that's a command line way of transferring files to your CS server. It's kind of nice, kind of handy. It can be quicker than FileZilla, but it is a command line command, so it's a little bit tricky to remember some of the arguments sometimes. Okay, so refresh this home page, intro to CSS. There we go, there's our heading. Okay, so I can keep working on this locally, and I can just rerun this scopy command whenever I'm ready to move it back over. Alright, so let's add a link. Back to home page, right at the top. So we'll say href, and this is in the lecture 4 folder, so we want to go back up to the public HTML and go index.html, and this is our home page, and we'll close it, close the anchor tag. Okay, I'm going to run that again. Now I've got this home page. There you go. See, these links go back and forth. So at the home page, you see this is the home directory, and we're at index.html. Click on intro to CSS. We're in the lecture 4 directory and intro to css.html. Alright. So CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and it's basically the way you style elements in HTML. So you've seen several times so far we would add, like in this H1 element, we would add a style attribute, an equal sign, and quotes, and anything inside the quotes we could modify how our element looks. So one of the properties we used was color, and we can say red, and then you can do a background color of, say, blue. Okay. Save that, move it over to the server. Okay, so the background color is blue for this element, and the text, the color, is the color of the text, and that's red. So this is the style attribute. You can add style attributes to any HTML element. And one nice thing about CSS is it allows you to define a series of style elements, a block of them, and you can apply that entire block of style elements to any element you would like. And the reason for this is because when you make large applications, you have so many elements, it gets very infeasible to do style and then list out, say, you can easily have 20 of these properties on every element. And so that would mean every one of these H1 tags would have a style attribute and then 20 CSS properties inside. And it would get real hard to read. You don't even know what's going on in the document, right? So readability when you're coding is a very important thing. So you want to make things very clear and easy to understand. It's a big part of computer science and coding. Okay, so what the HTML standard has done is allows the addition of a style tag. That's just like the other HTML tags. Has an open and a close, and inside the style tag you can define style classes. Okay, so I'll call this my heading. My heading. Well, that works for my last name, but that's not what I meant. My heading. Okay, and in here I can put all of these style attributes that I defined on H1. So in this case I have 2 colored red. That's the text color. And I can make the background color blue. Okay. So instead of this style attribute now, I can just add the CSS class. The CSS class is my heading. So this has to match this in the style tag. This dot tells the CSS preprocessor to look for any elements that have a class my heading. That's what the dot means. It means that this part is a class, and that's what you're looking for. That's mainly all we're going to be doing with the CSS, is looking for classes, but there are other elements you can look for. I can actually set rules on every single H1 tag, for example. Okay, or every single paragraph tag, like that. So notice these don't have the dot. This means all H1 elements. Okay, this means any elements that have the class my heading. So that's what the leading dot means. Okay, so let's save this, copy it over. Reload. Sure enough, nothing changed. Well, did it copy over right? Let's look. We can go to our developer tools right here. The shortcut is Control-Shift-I. You're probably going to use this a lot. You can get to it in the menu or Control-Shift-I. So with the developer tools open, you can right click and look on inspect elements. That's what this inspect does. And we can see, yeah, it did copy over. Here's our my heading class. Okay, it just didn't change because we used the same CSS properties and values. So let's make this green. Reload. There, it's green. Nice and disgusting. Okay. So the nice thing about this is we can apply this class to just about anything we want. So I can create a second heading, and this one will be an H2 tag. This is some subheading, and I close it the H2 tag. Okay, and let's change that green. It's a pretty awful green. We can change this to a nice, nice light gray using the hexadecimal values. This is an RGB format. The first two characters are your red values. The second two characters are your green values, and the last two are your blue values. We mentioned that before, and I'll go more in detail about hexadecimal here soon. Okay, so we've got the H1 tag. We're going to have a little paragraph underneath, and we're going to add a class called my text. Close our paragraph tag, and to actually make it a paragraph, we can add a bunch of these. Okay, so I just use keyboard shortcuts there. Highlighted, Control-C copies the text to the clipboard, and Control-V pastes it. So I just copied and then held down Control-V, and it pasted a whole bunch. So this just helps you play around with it. Having a bunch of text on there helps you see what the CSS does a little bit better. And I can copy this whole paragraph element underneath heading 2. I'm just freaking out there. Not sure what happened there. So I'm going to add the my text class to our style, and we're going to say this is going to be color let's see, let's do not much red, a little green, and some blue. Let's see what that is. There we go, a little ISU blue there maybe. Alright. Okay, so let's see what we have here. We'll copy this over. Okay, so both of our headings now match this red and gray, which is still pretty hard to look at. So we can change those colors and make them more inviting. So let's make this tomato, a little bit of a softer red. Copy that over. Okay, now that doesn't blend in with the gray as well. So you can fiddle around with these colors as much as you want. We'll go back to red, and we can make this a lot darker, like a darker gray. Let's see what this looks like. Okay. But again, the nice thing is if you have a very complicated website, every single page on your website could just reference my heading, and by changing any of the properties underneath this style class, every single one of the elements in your website gets changed. So it's very powerful, so you don't have to go in and edit every single element. You can see how painstaking that would be and how awful that is. So this is really nice, and it also makes your code more readable. See, this just one class is a lot more readable than having all of this stuff in there. Okay. So let's see if my editor freaks out on me again for pasting that. Yay. It did not. Okay, so we'll add some extra paragraph text in there. There you go. So that is the basics of CSS, the style tag. That's the very beginning of CSS, but it's powerful and it allows you to edit your HTML elements and keep consistency between the different types of elements that you create on your page throughout the entirety of your website. Okay, so we'll go into more detail. You can make an external file from the style tag, and then every HTML file you create, you can import that file. So we'll go into that in another lecture. But this is just the very beginning, the most basic you can get of CSS, and it all surrounds this style attribute that goes inside the head tag of your HTML5 document. Okay? Alright. That's all I got for this one.